Hello, and welcome to a boundary-establishing episode of We Only Look Thin. I am Katherine Weigel, and I am one of your boundaried hosts.
Wow.
I have lost 150 pounds, and with me today is...
Donald Weigel, also established within boundaries.
That rolls off the tongue.
Yes, and I have lost a little over 100 pounds.
Congratulations.
And I'm here to tell you about it.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about boundary hunting.
Yes.
No Boba Fett needed.
I've never seen the show Dog the Boundary Hunter. However,
as we
or
are,
Dog the Bounty Hunter.
As we are like to do, we are going to talk about boundaries and hunting for them. But before
this is also the return of the tip of the week.
Tip of the week to you.
Tip of the week to you, Tao.
Tao.
And the product of the week.
Pow.
Pow.
We're back. We're back in business.
Both are back after a 3-week hiatus of our award-winning 3-part series on how to get started. If you haven't heard it, please go back and listen to it now. It is amazing.
It covers everything, and everyone is fixed now. But
everyone is fixed. But in case you're not fixed, in case you didn't hear it, listen to this episode.
So this is going to be, this episode is going to be chocked full of boundary establishing tips. But first, we're going to start out with a tip of the week. Tip of the week to you.
Tip of the week to you.
So, Donald, what is the tip of the week?
The tip of the week, and this ties into boundaries.
Everything we're going to talk about starts here.
Yeah, is don't assign homework to other people.
Now,
and what do I mean by that, dear?
You mean, this isn't, we're not talking about Mrs. Carberry in first grade assigning homework.
No.
We are talking about giving other people homework and things to do and things to follow up on and taking their time. And you feel perhaps like you're being generous. You're sharing information. You're asking someone to join in the fun.
Yep.
But oftentimes you're putting a burden on someone else.
Yeah. So our episode is going to be about, setting boundaries for yourself and why that's healthy and how that helps with the weight loss. But in the process of that, we want you to be cognizant of other people's boundaries and don't infringe upon them.
So, for example, I have a few examples for you.
I would love to hear about them.
Say you have a child that is in the babysitting world. Maybe you say, "Hey, I told our neighbor that you would be happy to babysit for them tomorrow," without previously consulting with them. You are giving someone homework.
Yeah.
Or, hey, you know what? I told my old work friend that you lived in this neighborhood, and I told them that they could get in touch with you to find out all the best restaurants and places to stay and tell you all about the traffic signs in the neighborhood. So I told them to give you a call. Wah, wah.
And also Yelp exists. And TripAdvisor.
Or if you're volunteering in school, hey, you know what? I told the teacher that we would co-chair the carnival committee this year.
Yeah.
Giving somebody else homework without respecting their boundaries.
You didn't ask that person if they would co-chair with you.
Yeah, or in my case, I used to be a professional photographer. Someone would say, hey, you know what? Will you take our family picture? Just come over. It'll take 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll just take 20 minutes.
Yeah, just take 20 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
We're easy. We're easygoing. I'm an easygoing person. Or this also happened. Someone was hosting a baby shower for someone, and someone suggested, hey, you know what? I think you should make a Waldorf salad for that party.
Catherine had no idea how to make a Waldorf salad or what was involved.
But it's like giving someone else some chore that you think is easy because
you're
not doing...
You should make a Waldorf salad.
You're not doing the work.
Not just like make a salad and bring it over, but specifically a Waldorf salad. Yeah.
If you have made a Waldorf salad, let us know about it. You'll be invited to the party.
So the whole point here is be cognizant of what you're asking of people and the fact that everybody's got their own stuff going on. Everybody's got their own boundaries. They've got their own things to deal with. Try not to add to it. Try not to pile on. Try not to just assume somebody is going to do something. And also, when somebody says no, try and be understanding of that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that. I think it is very easy to see ways where you feel compromised or you feel taken advantage of. But conversely, we think, I just asked my friend to call you. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
We don't look inside ourselves and see the homework that we're giving others. So it really does work both ways.
Yeah, what's that quote you told me not that long ago, which is just occurring to me now? It's like, the easiest work is work that you don't have to do.
Right. It seems like a breeze.
Yeah, like
when you're not the one doing it.
You're not the one who has to do it. Like everything seems easy.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean that you're not a wonderful person with a generous heart and spirit, but just be
generous.
Be cautious because
So
other people
wonderful.
might have boundaries also. So that was our tip of the week.
Tao!
Tip of the week to you, Donald.
Tip of the week to you, darling.
Thank you.
No, the people couldn't see. I raised my arms in a flourish when I said that.
He did. I should make a GIF out of it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We don't have any GIFs, like personal GIFs, because we mostly just sit around losing weight without doing much, just walking around.
The GIF would be like us walking or being on the rebounder.
Yeah.
And it would be like, keep doing stuff.
Keep going. Moderately.
One step at a time. Calories in and calories out or something.
Exactly. So boundaries, it is a big issue, and we are going to go. It is hunting season for boundaries.
Yeah.
So
are we going to cross some boundaries or establish some boundaries?
We are going to,
or all of the above.
We're going to do it all. But I think we're going to take all of us right now. We're going in the Wayback Machine, and we're going to talk about where boundaries start. And many of us maybe have personalities in which maybe it started young. It started, maybe in high school, maybe before that. Donald, did you have a situation with a boundary that you'd like to share with our listening audience?
Well, let me think. I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but I'll think back to my childhood. Oh, yes, there was a moment that I can remember.
Imagine Wham! Is playing on the radio as Donald was telling us.
I think this was actually This was pre-Wham!
Oh boy,
probably
pre-Wham.
like
PW.
82 or something like that. I was already trying to make some extra money mowing neighborhood lawns, and I was doing our next door neighbor's lawn, and I think I was charging like $5 or $7, something like that, to do it. And another woman in the neighborhood said that she thought she was being overcharged for her lawn. And I asked her how much, and I don't remember. And I said, "Oh boy, I'll do it for $5 or whatever it was that I was charging before," without ever seeing how big her lawn was. And then I went to do it, and it was at least double the size of the lawn that I had been doing, and possibly bigger than that. And so it took at least twice as long to do. But I felt like I was obligated at that point, and I didn't stick up for myself, and I didn't say what I actually wanted, and so I just kept mowing the lawn for the rest of that summer for the $5 that was agreed upon.
And now fast forward, and he's still mowing that lawn
I'm
for $5.
Still mowing
emotionally
yes.
Mowing that lawn for $5.
In my heart, I'm mowing that lawn,
well,
and I'm the one paying the price for it.
There was only one set of mower prints, and that was yours.
Right. That's right.
But I was, not that Donald asked me about my childhood, but I'm going to tell you about
darling.
my childhood.
Do you have an example from your childhood?
Do I?
I'm a very inquisitive person who wants to know all about you.
So,
it's not just about
he's
me.
so inquisitive.
Yeah.
Boy, nosy Nelly over there.
Yeah.
So for me, I was a people pleaser. I wanted everyone to like me. But I also didn't know how
and
to
it
set.
didn't work.
It didn't
In
work
fact, the
out.
opposite happened. Nobody liked you. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Whoa, okay. This is feeding on my fears. Thanks, dude. I'm calling you dude.
Come on, Broheem.
So, I, as a kid, was babysitting, wanted to make some extra money, just like Donald. And I didn't know what to charge. I didn't do any research, and I wanted people to like me. So I told a woman I would charge $1 an hour. And I imagine her now sort of doing this like evil, like, ha ha ha, witch.
Yeah, for sure.
Thing. She said, okay. And so I went over to the house, and she said, I'll be back in 12 hours.
In my mind, she has the long, like, sharpened fingernails, like in Angel Heart.
Yeah.
Like Robert De Niro in Angel Heart, as she's doing it.
So I did not stand up for myself. I did not say, you know what? That's a little much. I can do 4 hours for that much, and then each additional hour. I didn't have any of that business acumen back then. So this woman was gone for 12 hours, and I got $12 American at the end.
that led you to get a degree in business later on, so it would never happen again.
But it started back then. I wanted to please people. I wanted to take the easy road. I didn't establish any boundaries. And I spent many years not establishing boundaries. Again, I was very into just staying out of the way and kind of being like, I don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to tell people how I feel. And that led to resentment.
Yeah. And that's really the bottom line here. We're talking about it is important to set boundaries for yourself, because when you don't, it leads to you feeling as if you're being taken advantage of. It leads to resentment. It leads to anger and burnout. I have there was a study done in 2016 where in our work or in our personal relationships, poor boundaries lead to resentment, anger, and burnout. That was from a study written up by Nelson in 2016 that I found on the interweb.
Well, and if I hadn't changed my life around, it might also be on my epitaph, because I've said this before, and I didn't have words for it then, but before I started this last time weight loss journey, I, at 41, felt underpaid, undervalued, underappreciated, overworked, just everything was, I was a victim to everything in my life. And I thought that was the way my life was. I didn't think of it as a choice. I just saw it as fact.
Yeah.
And even in starting this weight loss, I just started by not wanting to feel the way I felt. I was eating and drinking all the time to soothe my emotions and to buffer my emotions, because I didn't feel confident enough to stand up for myself in any situation.
Yeah, and this is why setting boundaries is important in terms of weight loss, because not setting boundaries led to me constantly emotionally eating, trying to soothe myself with food, and that led to me gaining a whole bunch of weight.
Way to go. Way to show them. But it really, I mean, at the time, in, December 2015, there had been some layoffs at my job. Someone had quit. We were moving offices. And at the time, my boss said, hey, do all that work, and you're also responsible for the office move.
That's a reward.
Along with Person X. I'll just call them Person X.
Person X.
X. I was totally overwhelmed by all of it. And I just kept taking it on and acting like a martyr. And I didn't think I had a choice. About a week into the office move, my boss called and said, hey, you know what? Person X said that they were too busy and they're not going to work on the office move anymore. So it's your job.
Yeah.
Did I grouse? Did I say anything? No, I'm a team player. I want to show people that I've got what it takes to be a team player.
Yeah.
And it nearly ruined me. Like, I'm not exaggerating here. I was a ghost in a shell. I'm like getting teary-eyed thinking about it. Like,
oh, honey.
I just kept taking and taking and taking. I didn't think I had a choice. I felt that because someone else had established a boundary, that I didn't have the right to establish a boundary. I didn't ask for help. And it got me into a position where I was literally eating and drinking to soothe myself every night. And to the point where I could barely fit into my clothes. And it never occurred to me in this, the 25 years before that of trying to lose weight, that my emotional eating had anything to do with my weight. I just thought it was a circumstance. And when I finally realized that boundaries were such a huge part of my emotional eating and my issue with weight, once I started working on those boundaries, my life got better.
Yeah.
The circumstances are the same. Work changes a little bit, but, we still have obligations. We've got family stress. We've got family tragedy. We've got, work things going on. But the way we respond to those things now is different. And it is still a work in progress. It is still something that I'm working on. But today we're going to give you some ideas of how to sort of look at boundaries, how to start establishing them for yourself, and why they are so important in this weight loss journey venture.
Yeah, setting boundaries is hard, but it's important to do it. I found a great quote on the internet. Givers need to set limits because takers rarely do.
Boom.
And that was said by a woman named Rachel Welchin. I would suggest, we've given this tip before, if you need to be reminded of that, set it as your computer wallpaper, set it as the wallpaper on your phone, as a reminder that takers will not set the limits, so you have to.
Well, and it's also not a taker's fault for taking what they want because they are asking for something.
Yeah.
And you are giving it to them.
Yeah, they are an adult and they are advocating for what they want. You have to be an adult. No one is going to advocate for you. You can't expect somebody else to, so you have to do it. And it's really hard. It is really hard for me. I am still working on it. I am still learning to do it. It is a daily process that I am still trying to master, and I am a long way from getting there, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
Well, and I think it can happen in personal relationships. It can happen with family. It can happen with friends, work situations. So much of our life, and if you're listening to this and you have issues with food, I bet that there are times when you have soothed yourself with food.
Yeah.
And times when you have said yes, when in your heart you meant no. When you decided to be a victim of the circumstance. When you thought if you didn't do it, nobody would do it. It wouldn't get done. And you're kind of like, I used to be a martyr.
Yeah.
I hated my position, but I also sort of regaled in the being the most put upon, overworked, underpaid victim because it meant I got to use food as my crown.
Yeah,
crown.
I'm a big time emotional eater, and I used to use all of these stresses as an excuse to eat, and recognizing that I was doing that was a big part of it, but also realizing that I'm not a victim in my own life. There are definitely circumstances that are beyond my control, but really it's, most of it is within my control, and how I stand up for myself, how I set limits in my life is really up to me.
Well, and I too, if you follow the Gretchen Rubin 4 tendencies model, she talks about outer expectation or expectation for getting things done. And I identify as an obliger, which means that when other people are relying on me, I am very likely to get things done because I feel obligated to live up to someone else's need. I want to be liked. I want to be appreciated. But there's also something called obliger rebellion, where you give and give and give so much and take on so much that you just sort of shut down at some point. And that's back in December of 2015, I was shutting down and I was using food and alcohol to do that. And I was in such a depressive state that I was no good to anyone.
Yeah.
I wasn't a good mother. I wasn't a good friend. I wasn't a good employee because I resented everyone. And if you are carrying around resentment, it is oftentimes a choice, because we compromise ourselves and we compromise our own needs. In some conditions, we can't manage it, but we're gonna talk about some things. I think we both have some tips of sort of how to start creating some boundaries for yourself in a healthy way, because it really does affect every part of your life.
One of the things to keep in mind is that no one is going to give you a reward for this. Like, the rewards are eternal. They are rewards you are giving yourself. And that's one of the things that makes it so difficult. Like, when you say no to somebody, they're not going to say, bravo for standing up to me.
It's not going to be like the slow clap, like at the end of the movie.
Exactly.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
But one of the tips I would give is ask yourself if the potential conflict for standing up for yourself is really worth the resentment that you're going to feel for being taken advantage of, for having somebody step across that boundary all the time. And what I mean is, is standing up for yourself going to cause you more grief than how you're going to feel if you don't stand up for yourself? And if the answer is no, then it is important for you to go ahead and stand up for yourself and set that boundary and ask for what you actually want or need.
Well, and I think there are entire books on boundaries, and there's different kinds. At work, there are times when we can't say 100% no to our boss, but we can at least speak our needs.
Right.
And what I should have done back then was to say, this is too much for me to do on my own, and we need to find another person to help out in place of person X. But I made myself the victim of circumstance, and that was not healthy. And
No.
what would be the worst thing that my boss would do? Would they flog me? Would they fire me? No, they'd probably just say, we can't spare anyone.
Yeah.
And at least then I would know. But sitting with that resentment and anger was not healthy for anyone. Least alone my family, because I brought all the work stress home with me. And a lot of times too, and I do this, I internalize things. And one big tip and suggestion is to know your limits. A lot of times we don't know why we're mad about something because we're so used to taking things on that we don't even really identify what our issues are. It would be helpful for you to think about your physical limits, your emotional limits, mental, political, spiritual. What are you willing to compromise on and what are you not? And it all is circumstantial. It's not like you have this big, 10 commandments of like, I will not do this. But if someone says like, oh, will you help me move this weekend? And you're like, well, I've got a really bad back, but they're my friend and I better do it. And it'd be terrible to say no because they helped me 20 years ago when I moved in from college. Like knowing your physical limit. Knowing your emotional limits. If someone is needing a lot of emotional attention from you, can you give that?
Yeah.
Does it drain you? Does it make you want to eat? Really start thinking about different ways that you absorb other people's energy and their needs while compromising yourself.
Yeah, clearly defining what your boundaries are is really the first step in this. And it may seem obvious, but sometimes it's really hard to just even figure out, well, what is my limit? Why am I feeling resentful and burned out at this situation? Like, what is pushing me to that point? And really defining what your boundary is the main first step in this.
Yeah, and I think it starts with what is making you feel uncomfortable. There are times when someone will say, hey, can I borrow your saute pan? And you say, sure, why not? And then someone else says, oh, hey, can you join me on the committee at school that's going to take all these extra hours on top of everything else that you're doing? That's sort of privately said. And and then you hear yourself go, yeah, I can do that. Like without, you don't want to disappoint someone. You want to seem like a team player. But when you start feeling uncomfortable, that's when stepping back, and we're going to give you some tools too later on how to implement this in a real way. Because not everyone is going to respect your boundaries. People are going to take what they want to take. They're going to pressure you, whether it's food. Come on, have an extra donut, or come on, join the committee, or like, we're relying on you. If you don't do this, like, none of that is your responsibility, but we feel like we've got to take it on.
Yeah, and that's one of the tips I have is like expect people to cross your boundaries. Like expect violations. Don't be surprised when it happens because a lot of people aren't going to know what your boundaries are, and a lot of times you haven't explained them to them. You haven't explained the boundaries, and even if you have, a lot of people are still going to try and push. So you've got to be ready for that, and you've got to have predefined consequences in mind. Like, what is going to happen? Are you going to, simply just tell that person again? Are you going to, decide not to be in a relationship with that person? Are you going to go so far as to just cut them out of your life? Like, you have to decide, like, what are the consequences when somebody does violate your boundary, because it is going to happen.
Well, and two, for me, tuning into your feelings of discomfort and resentment. We feel taken advantage of when people prey on our sympathies, our time, money, our generosity, our good nature. You're a team player. You don't want to rock the boat. There are all these ways that we internalize our feelings and don't share. And when we don't share, nobody can guess how we're feeling about something. If you say yes, they assume yes. If you say yes, but what you really mean is, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're asking me this again. They're doing it all the time. And, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. They can't guess that from a yes.
Then it becomes your fault. And
I do this all the time.
Yeah, I do too. I have a real problem, like, because I'm in the movie and TV business, people ask me to read their scripts all the time, even though I have, nothing to do with creatively, okaying
I'm
anything.
the president of movies.
Yes,
I
I'm
read
the-
your script.
Yeah, I have nothing to do with the creative side of the business, but I still get asked all the time, and I have a real problem saying no, and it's been really hard for me to stand up for myself, but I've gotten much better at saying no to that sort of thing. But understand that if you don't say no, if you don't tell people, then it's on you. Like, you are an adult, you're a grown-up, and no one is going to advocate for you except for you. And so you need to get better at it.
Well, and I think Gretchen Rubin talked about almost acting like your own secretary. Like, well, Catherine can't do that right now because she has obligation X, Y, and Z.
Let me check Catherine's calendar and see if Catherine can. Oh, no. Catherine
don't
is far
talk
too busy.
about yourself in the third person.
Yeah.
But it's that being direct, which is very difficult for me because I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to be left out in the cold. So I compromise myself. But being direct, instead of saying maybe, or, oh, sure, this one time, or, well, okay, I'm sure I can figure it out. Like, all of those tentative words tell people yes. Like, yes, it's okay, and yes, you're okay with it. But all of that are sort of resentment words. When you're direct with people, people ask direct questions, and we feel like we can't be direct back. And this can be in big work things, or just like small daily asides, or relationship issues that you have with your friends or family. Even like Donald at work or whatever, like, he is eating well, and this is a very small thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he's eating a big salad, and someone at work says, wow, you're going to eat all that?
Yeah.
Or like, wow, that's all you're eating?
Yeah, for sure. And the flip side of that, and one of, I'm going to segue into my next tip, is be very consistent. Don't bend or break under different circumstances, especially with the same people. And how that ties into what we were just talking about, there are food pushers at work everywhere. And I have people constantly, hey, the craft service guy's got nacho bar today. Hey,
come on.
Yeah, come on. Why don't you do
on.
it? And, I have to consistently say no and be consistent about no, I don't want to eat that. I'm not hungry right now. Like, whatever it is that I have to say. But not bending your rules under different circumstances, and eventually people do get it. They do catch on, and they realize, there are people who have stopped asking me because they realize I'm not going to eat those things.
But then there are people like family members who, and we're not going to fix every single circumstance and problem in this episode, but family members who will say things like, ooh, you're eating that? I thought you were on a diet.
Yeah.
Or like, boy, you really need to lose weight, but I made you some homemade bonbons. Like, you get mixed messages from people.
Yeah.
And as a grown-up, we have to decide how we're going to respond to those things. But being assertive without being aggressive, I think, is a fine skill. I am still figuring it out myself, and there are some battles I'm ready to have, and other battles that I'm not ready to have. And again, we're going to give some tips on how to manage that later. Another big thing is giving yourself permission to have boundaries. A lot of times we don't feel like we deserve them. Again, we fear rejection, judgment, scorn, guilt. We don't deserve to have boundaries. Like, oh, their problems are bigger than mine. Why should I say no when someone asks me to help them move? Like, that would be rude. But people are just going to ask questions and tell their needs, and you have the ability to tell your needs, which is, no, that's not going to work for me, or I'm going to have to check back with you on that. Like, it's okay to deserve boundaries for yourself, because when you say no to someone else, you're saying yes to your own self-worth, your time, your energy, your emotional boundaries. It all matters.
Yeah, it's very, very important for self-care to do this. And also get used to it. Like, it's not like you just can one day set all your boundaries and then be done with it. It's not like a one-time, like, you put up a road sign and suddenly everybody's like, oh, I get it.
They have boundaries.
They have boundaries. I'm not going to cross them now. Like, you have to set your boundaries, and then you have to be prepared to defend them over and over and over again. Whether that is, your time, whether it's pushing food on you, whether it's getting you to do things that you don't actually want to do. And you have to be prepared to stand up for yourself over and over again. So get used to it.
Yeah, and it's not a one and done, even with a particular person. I have some big family issues, some little family issues, and it has been really hard for me to sit back and decide what role I play in the resentment that I feel. And there was a circumstance a few years ago, it shall remain nameless, where I wanted something and I just assumed people would know what I wanted because they could read my mind.
Right.
Because in my history, someone had done this for me and I just assumed that someone would do it for me in turn. And I carried physical resentment. Like, I felt nauseous. I knew it was time for me to ask for what I needed. And it felt like every fiber in my body just wanted to eat instead of cope with the situation.
Yeah, and that sadly is what we do. Or, when I say we, I mean Catherine and I.
Royal me.
Yeah. Like, when I don't get what I want, what I need, and I feel these feelings of anger and resentment, I turn to food to soothe myself. Well, and I've gotten much better at not doing that, but the urges are still there.
Well, and in this particular situation, I finally, I was in the Half Size Me community, and Heather Robertson in that community talked about boundaries. She had an episode on boundaries, and it made me realize how important that was to me. And I managed to ask the family member for the thing I wanted, and it took me about 4 days to build up the courage. I felt nauseous for 3 of the days.
Yeah.
I felt shaky. My heart rate was fast. And then guess what? I asked for what I wanted, and the person said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And that was it. And I spent 41 years not asking for what I wanted because I was afraid of what? That they were going to throw a chair at me for asking for something. And it gave me some serious relief. I felt like my needs had been addressed.
Yeah.
I was honest. And the person could have just as well said no, but then it would have just been, okay, I asked and they said no, which is also someone's right. They don't have to say yes to you just because you're speaking your need. And Donald just mentioned that. But it was such a relief to go, oh, the world did not end. It didn't cause World War III.
And that is a big lesson that I've learned, that 9 times out of 10, my anticipation about asking what I want
arguments you have in your head
far worse. I was telling Catherine this recently. It just happened a couple of days ago at work. Somebody at work really wanted something, and they came in, and about 30 seconds into asking for it, my boss said, "Yes, fine, you deserve that." But it was obvious that this person had practiced a speech and felt like they really had to get all of the reasons out. And so they spent another, close to 10 minutes, explaining, even though my boss had already said, "Yes, you can have what you want." He felt like he really had to get the whole argument out. And so I think that I do that a lot. I feel over-explain. And also, I build up this whole thing about having to come up with all of these arguments and reasons. And, a lot of the time people just say, "Oh, okay, I get it," and it doesn't happen every time. And, I won't promise that it will, but it's certainly been my experience that a lot of the time I make the asking much worse than it actually ends up being.
Well, and 2, I think for me, the amount or the number of conversations I have in my head that are negative about it. And I know we talk about Seinfeld all the time, but George is in a situation where he leaves a meeting and someone has said something and he didn't have a good comeback. And then 2 hours later, he's like, "The jerk store called and they're all out of you." He thinks of the perfect response much later. Well, and I think for me, because I am a jokester, I come back with these snarky remarks, and going back to the being direct, there are plenty of times when you want to respond with, "You think I have time for that?" Like you ask a doofy question, or, "Hey, the jerk store called." Yeah. And instead of just going, "You know what? I don't have time for that." And that's it. I don't have to explain my life story. I don't have to justify myself. And no, neither does anyone else. It's okay to have that boundary. But that instinct to be snarky or passive aggressive, or that confirmation bias where then you go to your colleagues at work and be like, "Oh boy, I need this, but there's no way that, Sally's going to approve it.
Right.
And you build up this like story of being a victim.
That's Sally, never approving stuff.
But I think we build up all of this negative energy. And there are times when your boss is just going to say no. And it doesn't mean that they're out to get you and that, they're out to ruin your life. Yeah. Sometimes no is just
your
no.
boss, your spouse, your, boyfriend, girlfriend, your family member, your sibling, your parents. Like, there are going to be times when people just say no, but it is worth sticking up for yourself and asking for what you need.
Yeah. And I think being able to identify yourself, I always saw myself as the caretaker, the family fixer, the level-headed one that was able to take on the stress of other people. And that turned into food. And that turned into alcohol.
Yeah.
And it was doing no one any favors
except the food and alcohol companies who were making money.
But, you think of yourself, oh gosh, I got to be a team player because if I'm not, then my boss isn't, going to promote me, or I've got to take this on, or I've got to give more and more and more. And the people with healthy boundaries have time, like I've joked about this before. I had a colleague who would run 5 miles in the morning before work, and he would show up maybe 20 minutes late. And I was so resentful. I was like, oh, fine, boy, if I was able to be that late, then I could run 5 miles. And that's why, I wouldn't be 300 pounds if I ran 5 miles in the morning.
Yeah.
When this guy was living his own life, taking his own consequences, like making it happen for himself. And when I finally realized that, like, I have the power to create my own life for myself.
Yeah.
And maybe if I got up earlier and stopped watching Seinfeld reruns until 11 o'clock, I could run a couple miles in the morning. But I made it myself the victim instead of the champion.
Yeah. And which brings me to my final tip. I think Catherine has a lot more to say, but my final tip is don't blame others for violating your boundaries. People don't know what they are unless you tell them. And even when they do, people still have their own stuff going on. Look, basically, I know we don't like to admit it. Basically, we're all very self-centered, and people don't oftentimes realize anything beyond what they want and need. And so you can't blame them when they violate the boundaries. And you have to then reassert yourself and stick up for yourself when it happens.
Well, and I think we value acceptance over our own needs.
Yeah.
We just want to, we don't want to rock the boat. Oh, I don't want to fight with anybody. And oftentimes it's not about a fight. It's just being your authentic self. And that's not going to be agreeable to everyone because you always seem so easygoing. Like, what's the big deal with, suddenly you're talking about what you need.
Yeah.
But it is a moment-to-moment practice, like Donald said. And further, imagine someone else in your life, someone you've known for 20 years, who comes to you and says, you know what? I've been carrying this resentment for 20 years, and now I'm going to tell you about it. And, back in 7th grade, you took my pencil sharpener, and then you took, Barry to the dance instead of me or whatever. If you find a person who is suddenly, after 20 years, going to lay all of the injustices out on you, like, you'd be like, what is happening right now? You have been holding on to this for 20 years. That is poisonous. And it poisons a whole relationship by compromise after compromise after compromise. And even if a relationship, you don't agree on everything, if you just speak your needs as you go, it doesn't build up. I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
I would be so resentful if someone didn't, set up the party the way they were supposed to, or didn't guess that I was overwhelmed, or didn't guess that I needed help with whatever. And it is poison.
Yeah, it's like a pressure cooker. You have to open that steam valve a little bit from time to time, or else eventually it's just going to explode.
Well, and I think, too, we've talked about the Brene Brown book, The Gifts of Imperfection.
Good
I have to
book,
say it
everyone.
slowly because I want it to be the gifts of imperfection, like, those funny...
GIFs of
GIFs of imperfection.
Perfection, yeah.
But she talks about being your authentic self. And the more authentic we can be, the more we can speak our minds in a sensitive way. We're not talking about being a bull in a china shop, but just starting in small ways to assert our own needs and to share our vulnerabilities with the right people. Not everybody needs to hear everything we have to say, but a lot of times we're so quiet and we're so... we take so much in and don't share that we don't even know how to share our feelings. It can feel like too confronting to actually talk to someone face to face or on the telephone and tell them what we need. So we're gonna talk about some ways that you can start adding boundaries into your life, because you don't want to start with suddenly like an intervention. You know, you're quiet as a mouse for 20 years, and then you're like, all right, I got everything to tell to everybody all at once. Like, here it comes. Catherine and Donald told me to make a list, and I'm making a list. Like,
and you're all gonna hear about it.
You're all gonna hear about it.
The airing of grievances.
So
it's another Seinfeld reference.
It is. So I have a bunch of tips. Do you want to start with the tip, or?
No, it's all you.
It's all me. Okay. So this is where you start.
I feel like I've been giving my tips throughout the episode.
Oh, I'm just starting out. Okay. So the big tip is start small. That's it. Start small.
Yeah.
So think about all the times that you've gone out to a restaurant and something has been delivered cold, like the mashed potatoes are cold, or you order a drink and the soda water is flat. And you don't want to rock the boat and it's not going to say anything. I'll just eat it.
I'm really guilty of this, like not asking for what I want at a restaurant.
Think about all the times when you don't assert yourself in a transaction. Maybe start small by just going, you know what, the next time that my order is incorrect, or I don't get the right dressing, or whatever is warm,
there's not enough ice in my drink, or there's too much ice in my drink,
just say, pardon me, I wanted ranch dressing, not French dressing. That's it. Please, could you replace that? It doesn't mean that, people are going to spit in your food. You're just, you know what? The server wants you to get what you want, because then you get a bigger tip. Everybody wins. It's not fatal. And I still do this and have to remind myself that it is important to get what you ask for. You don't have to be rude about it and snap your fingers and, ask to speak to the manager, but just start with transactions.
Yeah, and it's just like everything else we talk about on this show. It's like you don't have to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour instantly. Like, you can slowly build up. You just increase your speed 1 mile an hour at a time until eventually you're at where you want. It's just like we talk about with food, just like we talk about with exercise. Like, slowly build these things up.
Yeah. And one thing I learned from Half Size Me and Heather was the notion you don't have to say yes on the spot to so much of your life. Oftentimes, it might be different, whether it's at school or with family things, or at your job. But oftentimes you can just say, you know what? I'm going to need to look at my calendar first, and I will get back to you. And that gives you the space and time to step back, assess your day. It doesn't mean that if you had just planned on being at home and puttering around that afternoon.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You don't have to have a good excuse to say no. But what you can say, you know what, I'm going to need to look at my calendar. You can then send a text or an email or call and say, you know what, that's not going to work out for me.
Or you could just say, I need to check with my social secretary. Yeah, then you sound fancy.
But so many times we feel like we need to answer immediately to something. So if you can step back for a minute, compose yourself, figure out what your needs are, because maybe you're just tired. Maybe you've had a long week. Maybe you've got a busy weekend ahead.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a full calendar to say no. You can just say no, and you don't have to over-explain yourself or come up with fake excuses. Just say, you know what, that's not going to work for me. So that is a big one.
Yeah.
Another one is, there are a lot of times when we're in situations where we're at a dinner table with family and something comes up and it's something that makes us uncomfortable, or a work situation or a school situation.
Yeah.
It is okay, even with your kids, if something comes up and it's a big issue, you can say, you know what? I'm going to need to step back from this and assess my feelings for a little while.
Yeah.
And step back from it. You don't have to jump into an argument. You don't have to jump in to defend yourself. This happened to me recently where I jumped into the deep end. It did not go well. My heart rate got crazy. I was short of breath.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I felt kind of sick to my stomach. And I didn't take the time to just go, you know what? This isn't going to go well. Let's stop talking right now.
We oftentimes don't make our best decisions when in the heat of the moment. And We talked about this recently with, a tip for food is, give yourself 10 minutes, set a timer and decide, like, is this really what I want to do? Do I really want to eat this? Or am I just doing it as part of the momentum, as part of my emotional eating, as part of my compulsive eating? And it works the same with setting boundaries.
Yeah. And so just saying, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to need to step away, or we're going to need to talk about this at another time because I need to really consider my thoughts. A lot of times in the moment when I'm angry or resentful about something, I don't even know what I'm maddest or most angry about. Like, is it that someone is wasting my time? Is that somebody is a taker and keeps asking things of me and never being there reciprocally for me?
Yeah.
Figuring out why I'm upset about something, I need a lot of time to process. It could be days before I come back with my "Hey, the jerk store called" response. But that's not, that snarky thing is a defense mechanism. What people deserve and what you deserve is an honest answer. Like, you know what? That makes me feel very uncomfortable. I'm not interested in talking about politics with you. You know what? I don't want to talk about my childhood right now. Whatever it is, like, it is okay to just step back and say, this isn't the time for me.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you all of the reasons why I don't want that food that you're offering me. Like, I don't have to tell you all of those things. And I would like to figure out if reciprocally is actually a word.
Yeah,
that's something I would like to step back and figure out.
I stuttered on that. I apologize in advance.
It might be a word. We'll have to look. We'll have to Google it.
Reciprocally.
Yeah.
There we go.
If it's a word, we want to hear about it.
So another tip is to write down your thoughts about a situation. Why were you angry? What happened? What role did you play in it? Were you accusing someone else of something? Was there a better time to get something done? Really stepping back and figuring out the who, what, when, and why of how you're feeling is critical to being an adult and to not eating emotionally.
And did it lead to you eating something that you didn't actually want, but you were trying to soothe yourself with food? Like, making that connection is huge.
Yeah. And like I said, if talking to someone about how you're feeling doesn't work, it's okay to put something down in an email and then go back and edit it. In the moment is maybe not a great time to rage text or rage email someone, but sit back, put something in your draft folder and just get it out there. Hey, you know what? I realized that this is upsetting me because when I was a kid, this happened. Or, you know what? I feel like I'm overextending myself right now. And what you said to me made me feel marginalized or second guessed. So it's okay to step back. And it's hard to talk to some people. Some people are not going to agree with you and are going to call you names and are going to tell you, that your needs aren't valid. You don't have to believe any of that. Just because someone doesn't, and it's not every single situation is going to end in like a happy ending, credits rolling.
Yeah.
Life happens and unrolls itself, but it feels so much better when you're like, you know what? I stood up for myself. I told somebody what I needed. And guess what? I didn't turn to alcohol or food to make myself feel better.
Yeah, and again, sometimes it is more important to take care of your health and your well-being than it is to take care of others. And I know that's really hard for some of us to do. Like, some of us just want to give, and give. But it's okay to take care of yourself. And learning that is an important step in the right direction.
Yeah. So I have just a couple more brief ones, and I think we'll be done for the day. But notice the boundaries of others. Are you trying to push other people? Do you see people with healthy boundaries? What example are they setting?
And that goes back to our tip of the week about not giving other people homework.
Yeah. But seeing how other people stand up for themselves, it seems effortless when they do it. It seems like hard and you want to barf when you do it.
Right.
But it takes practice and starting small.
Work that you don't have to do seems easy. It applies to all things.
It does. Another one was instead of saying I don't have time, because then you feel like it's a judgment on how you're spending your time, you can say that's not a priority for me right now.
Yeah.
I was on committees at school, and I was room mom, and I was on the governance council, and I was shutting down our office and moving offices, and it did no one any good because I was angry and resentful and shot daggers in people's eyeballs. So think about saying it's not a priority for me right now. Another, and I think this is kind of the big one, is when you say no to someone else, you're saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to your time, your emotional energy, your boundaries, your personal space, your self-care. And if it never occurred to me that boundaries had to do with my weight loss.
Yeah.
Like I was probably 4 or 5 months in before it kind of hit me. And
well, that's why we're doing this episode.
Yeah. So it all comes together. It all factors in how you treat yourself, how you respect your space. Our lives are the same as they were 3 years ago. We have the same family. We have the same jobs. We have stresses that change seasonally. And
getting to our goal weights didn't make all of that go away. It didn't fix everything.
No, but I used to think that people who were positive, I thought it was some gimmick. I thought that they were drinking some Kool-Aid and my life, if they had my life, then they'd see, what real pain is like. And that's why I'm this and this and this. I am a much more positive person now. I don't know if I'm still snarky as all get out, but finding a way to be honest with people and direct and to speak your needs, whether other people validate them or not, has been critical to this journey for me. And I think it has improved our relationship also.
Yeah, for sure.
The more we're able to set boundaries with our daughter, each other, our families, and all of that matters in weight loss, and it matters in your mental health, your physical health, because it manifests in ways we don't even realize. We're holding on to tension and anger and resentment, and that builds and builds and builds over time. And it could end in an explosion or ghosting people, which I've also done, where like suddenly I'm not talking to someone and they don't know why, because I have felt so exploited by them. The grown-up thing to do is maybe tell people how you feel. We're still working on it. I am still working on it.
For sure. And I think that is an important lesson, that it is going to require work and it is a constant battle to get better at it, but it's worth it.
Yeah. So, and it is very worth it, and it has been worth it to us. So, way to go. Way to set a boundary.
Way to go to set a boundary with you.
Yeah. Think of it as boundary hunting.
All right, we are quickly approaching the 1 hour mark in this episode. So, but we promised a product of the week. So, pow! Product of the week to you.
Product of the week to you. So, part of my feeling like a victim in the world and like I was being taken advantage of by my employers, my family, and consumer markets.
I can't wait to see where you're going with this.
So, our product of the week, tying in to me being a victim of society, is fruit and vegetable wash.
I'm really waiting to see how you're tying it in.
So I saw fruit and vegetable wash at Trader Joe's, and at stores they have different brands of them, but Trader Joe's carries
I'll link to some in the show notes.
Vegetable wash, and I thought someone just wanted to trick me out of $4.
Yeah.
I thought it was glorified water in a bottle that they were trying to pawn off on me for washing my vegetables. I got a tap. I can just tap the water and it's fine, and I'll just rinse it off. A few weeks, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago, I was like, you know what? I'll see if this product works. Like, I don't know, it was like Squeeze the Charmin commercial or something.
Yeah.
And I washed some cherry tomatoes and a few apples in a little clear white glass bucket thing or Tupperware. And wouldn't you know it, if the water was black as coal.
Yeah, there's a lot of unseen dirt on there.
But I thought it was a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. Wash your vegetables.
But really, the point is not the germophobia that we're about to spread. But for me, at least, it's like you fill kind of a basin with the wash, and
a big bowl,
whatever, and you allow your fruit and veggies to sit in there, and then they are pre-washed, and this eliminates a barrier to eating them.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier and more convenient. And you do this, we tend to do it on the weekend, and then the stuff's just ready to go for the week. And it's grab and go at that point. You don't have to actually stop and wash something before you eat it. You just take it and pop it in your mouth.
Yeah. So I've got washed potatoes. I have delicious
washed apples,
crispy apples in
washed
the
cherry tomatoes. All those good things are just ready to go.
So it is not a big veggie wash that is trying to steal all of our money.
No.
Vegetables, I heard somewhere like 20 different people touch your strawberries before you buy them or whatever. Like, don't just assume it's not the 5-second rule. It's like the 5-month rule.
Yeah,
don't do it. So wash those veggies and the fruits because we're better for it.
We are better for it. And you're
now
also...
you are.
Yeah. You're also better for listening to this program. And you can find us at weonlylookthin.com.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at weonlylookthin.
You can find us on Twitter at weonlylookthin. You could also email us, weonlylookthin@gmail.com, and we do respond. And we would also really appreciate if you would take some time, if you got something out of this, please take a moment to go to iTunes and rate and review us. Just a quick, could be anything, like these guys are great. These guys changed my life. They're an inspiration. Like, I'm just throwing out some
So
ideas.
good-looking.
I'm just, so good looking.
Ooh, we're at 199 ratings right now. Will you be 201?
You could be 200. 201, yes, exactly.
I know it's an off number, but But thank you to everyone who has rated and reviewed and commented. We've been getting lots of emails recently. We're changing lives, but you know what? You're changing your own life.
Yes.
It is you that's doing the work.
So you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah. If you don't know a personal boundary from a yard boundary, just remember that Donald and I are an inspiration.
Asian. The information that you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The hosts are not medical professionals. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.